Hey guys, back with another video. We're going to cover everything from San Francisco and a little bit more. Check it out. Hey Wolfpack, what's happening? Kyle Wolfe back here with another video. I know I was going to provide a little bit more coverage from Dakar than what I just did from the prologue stage, and I apologize for that. Had some personal stuff going on. Wasn't able to do anything, wasn't on anything. So again, I apologize for that, but we're going to cover everything from San Francisco, or San Diego, I should say, as well as I'll break down Dakar at the end. Even though everybody knows what happens, I'll still talk about it and still give some shout outs where due. So let's get started. So obviously, if you've been watching, I'm sure you guys have seen other channels. Obviously, other channels have talked about it. But at the end of the night in San Diego, all anybody could talk about was the Jett versus Anderson incident. And, you know, the whole thing with that, I get it. Now that I've seen footage of it, I can get where Jett was a little bit irritated, but also I think he started it. And, you know, I'm not picking on these guys. I'm not trying to bash on any of these guys, but you got to look at it from a sense of, yeah, you're racing for money and for positions and points, but you need to toe that line a little bit. And yeah, I know, and I've had people reach out to me, you know, ever since I've made my comments and everything. Jason's towed that line a lot. That's why he's been on probation as much as he has. But at the same time, he was the lead rider. The whole thing about, you know, the second person getting in trouble, you know, as a result of what the first person did, that's elementary school stuff, and I've always hated that. I got in trouble for that when I was in elementary school, and it irritated me then, and it still irritates me now. For Jason to react on the track and off the track to what Jett was doing is totally justifiable. Whether Jett feels like he was being held up or whatever the case was, you go in and hit somebody and knock them out of the line, and then they, you know, pull a move to block you, then that's justifiable. And I know, you know, in talking with people after the race, Jett feels like Anderson was cross jumping and whatever. I have not seen any footage of that. I know the main incident, yeah, Anderson crossed over on him, but it was off of a tiny single at low speeds, and that was a reactionary move to Jett hitting him into the corner and trying to knock him out of the line. Jason didn't like it. He cuts back over to make sure Jett didn't make the pass. Later on in the race, Jett flips him off, and we get what we get after the checkered flag at the end of the night. And when I go back to that, you know, elementary school reaction, Anderson went to ride away. You know, clearly we see that Anderson goes to ride. Jett grabs the face mask of his helmet. Anybody else, 99% of people in that situation are going to react in the exact same way that Jason did. He fires back, jerks his helmet, which I thought was great. You know, I love the counter reaction from Jason. But for the fact that either one of them got fined, I thought was a little bit ridiculous. And I even posted, you know, a little thing on my Facebook yesterday about it. If you're going to fine the guys, that the AMA is going to fine the guys, and I know Mike Pelletier, and I like him. He's a good dude, and I think he has the best intentions for, you know, progressing the sport and making it an even playing field for everybody. I truly do, and I think Mike has the right ideas for what's going on. However, whether it was his decision or somebody else's decision to fine the guys, I think that was a little bit much for helmet grab. I know that's technically that goes against the, you know, conduct or whatever, but unless somebody throws a punch, I feel like that was a bit over the line. Granted, the money goes to the Astros medical unit. It does not go back to the AMA. But you can't, if Jason hadn't reacted the way he did, essentially Jett gets away with it. Jett gets away with grabbing, you know, the front of Anderson's helmet, and that's it. The fact that Anderson went to ride away first instead of provoking the situation on his own initially shows that despite all the incidences that Jason's had before, he's growing up in a sense, but then he got brought right back down to it when you get a rookie like Jett grabbing your helmet the way he is. So I think, you know, when you put all the pieces together, I think finding those guys, and like I said, it was only $1,000. Jett admitted he was wrong. He admitted he, you know, took responsibility to what happened. He said he would pay Jason's fine, provide tickets to any of his fans to the Lawrence brothers experience in the paddock, which I think is a great move. And I think for moving on to the future, I think that was a smart move. Not to say that down the road, Jason still won't maybe take a shot at sawing his front wheel off, but I think that was a good step forward, and good on Jett to actually, you know, take the initiative and take the responsibility for the way he acted during that race and after the race, after everything went down. But I think back to the, you know, the original point of that, I think to fine those guys for no more than that, I think was a bit much. I mean, I was in Los Angeles for the opener in '97 when Rusty Holland and I think it was Michael Ferrandis got into it on the first lap. They were swinging at each other, trying to rip each other's helmets off. They got disqualified right then and there. I think that was, justified for the AMA doing that, but I think just jerking on the front of helmets, I think was a little bit over the line too. I think a warning would have been justified for that, and then if anything moves forward, then you start fining. But for 3 races in and for given what happened, I think the fine was a little bit much, but that's my own opinion on that whole deal. But it's going to be interesting to see moving forward into the year what happens with those two. All right, and unfortunately that took away from the bigger picture of the whole night. Aaron Plessinger finally getting his first 450 win. Long time coming, and I'm so glad he finally got it done. I've known Aaron since he was a little tiny kid, 4 or 5 years old, running around at my dad's races, when his dad, Scott Plessinger, a 2-time GNCC champion, was still racing, still doing my dad's team hare scramble events. I've known Aaron, like I said, him and the whole family, Angie, Danielle, everybody since the kids were very, very young, since Aaron was very, very young, riding bicycles with him and my brother at Loretta's one year when Aaron was still on 50s doing really well, and watching him grow up through the GNCC ranks. And it was just so cool to see him come through the ranks like I have. And, I've helped him out at GNCCs before. I've pitted him, for fuel stops and stuff like that at various times. And just to knowing Aaron like I do, to see him grow through the process and become the 250 West champion years ago, the 250 national champion in that same year, to struggle like he has throughout his 450 career, and then to finally get that win. Really pumped for him. Aaron hasn't changed. His personality, he might be overdoing it a little bit with the cowboy thing and doing it for Dale and all that, but he's not doing anything wrong. But he stayed true to who he is, and I'm really pumped for him. And unfortunately, the whole Jason versus Jett thing took away from his win a little bit. But tell me one person in that whole paddock throughout the entire industry that wasn't pumped for Aaron getting that win. It was the same thing as when Brayton got his win at Daytona back in 2018. No different than Andrew Shore getting his win at Seattle that year in 2012. It was a feel-good story and something that everybody wanted to see. And I was pumped to see it happen, but I'm glad to see Aaron and know him like I have and progress with him. And, pumped for the whole family that was there that night. Scott was there, his wife, Kendall, who I've known forever. So just the whole family atmosphere and everybody that was involved. It was really cool to see Aaron pull that off. And I'm happy for him. I'm really excited to see where he can take this moving forward into his career. So there was a lot of controversy in San Francisco last week as far as the track was concerned. And anybody that's throwing shade on Dirtworks, I've known those guys, a lot of those guys, since I was a very little kid. Rich Winkler, who owns the company and, was in charge for a long time, great guy. He knows what he's talking about. A lot of those guys on that track crew, most of the guys on that track crew grew up racing. They know what it takes to put a track together. With San Francisco, the decision was made not necessarily from Dirtworks, but the decision was made to cut the whoops, flatten them out where it made it raceable. Okay, fine. I don't agree with cutting sections out of racetracks, but with how bad those whoops were, I could kind of see it on that end. It would have made for some exciting racing, but had half the field crash on the first lap going through the whoops, then we wouldn't really had much of a race. Moving into San Diego the other night, I'm pretty sure there was discussion again about cutting the whoops because of how bad everything was going. Nate Thrasher missed him 1 lap in the heat race. He got penalized 2 positions for it. There was a discussion, I believe, to cut the whoops out again. I'm really glad they didn't. That provided better racing, I think. When you flatten a section out, that doesn't provide racing. Granted, most of the racing and most passing is obviously done in corners. You get the rhythm sections and all that stuff, but when it's a half mud, half tacky race like that, let the guys race, let them figure out. There's a reason they're the best riders in the world in this discipline. Let them race. If an obstacle becomes completely impassable, okay, then take it out. Just because it's challenging though, you need to leave it in. You need to let the guys figure it out. And when you do that, it spreads everything out to where the guys, they don't want to follow. And then you get everybody riding across the whoops all the way across the pad. And then that way it creates better racing. When you take something out like that, you look at San Francisco the week before, they flatten out the whoop section, you get 1, maybe 2 ruts, and everybody files into the same line and there wasn't a whole lot of passing unless somebody crashed. I'm really glad that the whoops weren't taken out in San Diego. I think that's something that, whether it be Feld or AMA or whoever's kind of above Dirtworks making those decisions, I really feel like that needs to be taken into consideration. There's a reason Feld has hired Dirtworks all these years to build the tracks and to maintain the tracks. Most of those guys grew up racing. Most of those guys, all those guys are running equipment. They know what they're doing, and they know, if there's too much, not enough water, moisture in the ground, anything like that, they know what needs to be done in order to fix it. And I think their experience and their knowledge in a lot of aspects needs to kind of take precedence over the guys above them that are, essentially they're paying them, but I think their knowledge kind of needs to take a precedence in situations like that. I want to talk a little bit about the 250 class. I think and I know that the rule was made right before 2023. I think it needs revamped again. You're looking at this, and I understand why the whole process started the way it did years ago with the 250 class. And I don't mean the initial with the 125 class. I mean to where the 250 class essentially became the entire part of the program, showing the qualifying races, showing the LCQ, showing the main event. And they get the same kind of TV exposure as the 450 guys, because those factories that the OEMs were, with their supported teams, were spending so much time and money with these guys. They wanted the same television time and everything to sell their sponsors on moving forward into the future. That's a perfectly legitimate reason. However, now when you get the only way to advance out of that 250 class, the only way you are forced out of that 250 class is to win a title, I think that backs everything up throughout the entire system. They showed that graphic with RJ and Jordan, this being the 10th year for both of them in that class. They came up through the system at the same exact time as Blessinger. They're in their 10th year. And Jordan almost won the East title back in 2017. He was leading the race. He had the points lead, and then he crashes out of the event. So that was 7 years ago that Jordan almost won a title. And then RJ, every time he's in position for a title, which has been a lot over the years, something happens and he doesn't get it. But for those guys to be in their 10th year, and I'm not throwing shade at these guys. I like both of these guys. They're great for the sport, great personalities. I like both of them. I've got no problems with these guys. And I'm not blaming them for how this is. I'm putting this on the AMA and the OEMs, the teams, for creating this system the way it is. And, when you back up over the years, you look at guys that came through the system that were the top amateurs that didn't really get a fair crack at the elite teams, the elite 250 teams. It just kind of throws everything off from how the precedent was set all the way back in the 80s and the 90s. The most recent examples that I can think of would be like the KTM Origin Brigade program. It was a second level deal from factory KTM, and guys like Alex Fry, Mitchell Falk, and Derek Drake came up through the system. They were the top guys in amateurs, and then they didn't get a fair crack, and after a couple years, that was it. They were out of the program. They were left fighting for themselves. Alex Fry, he had injuries. He was done. I think he's doing real estate or something now back in Maryland. Mitchell Falk, a lot of concussions. He's done. He's doing real estate. Derek Drake, he has heart issues that were undiagnosed for years. He kept fighting. He's still racing though, and he's with that Bar X Suzuki team on a 450, and he's doing well. I'm glad that Derek stuck it out. But those three examples right there of the guys that were the top amateurs and then not even given a crack at the factory group, whether they were deserving of it or not, and maybe that's something. There was something behind the scenes there that I don't know. That could very well be a possibility. I don't know. But when it was, three instances all right together, and the way it was done, and then how fast everything went from the time they were brought into the pro system and then it was done, like I said, it was just kind of a raw deal for those guys. And I think we're still seeing that now. You look into 2024, moving into 2025 with the guys that are coming up through amateurs into the system, you could very well be looking at that same thing. And the guys that I'm immediately thinking off the top of my head are Drew Adams, Christian Yannick, Enzo Temmerman, Jeremy Fapani, Liam Aloff. Those guys that were the top guys in B classes last year, and Schoolboy 2 that are moving up to A class. Logan Best would be another one of them. That's 5 or 6 guys. Maybe 2 of them are going to get signed to an elite team by the time Loretta's is done this year, if they haven't already signed deals right now. Another name that would be added to that list would be Casey Cochran, because he was in that B group last year with those guys, but then he gets brought on with Rockstar Husky, so he's already taken care of. So that's already one spot taken out of the equation amongst the whole entire pro paddock. Those 5 or 6 other guys are going to either sign with a pro team, they're going to sign with a second tier team, or they're going to be left fighting for themselves as privateers when they come out of that A class after Loretta's this year. When you take guys like Jordan Smith, RJ Hamsire, Faulkner would be another one of them, McAdoo. And again, I've got nothing against any of these guys, but when you look at their credentials over the years and then how long they've been in the class, I think there's something there needs to be a system, whether it's an age rule, whether it's the 23 and under rule like it is in MX2 over in Europe, or maybe bring it to 25, since a lot of these kids now are 17, 18 years old when they're coming into the pro ranks, minus Jett, Hayden, Bomer is 17 now, so minus the elite guys that are the exception and not the rule. I think there needs to be something where it kind of brings it back to even, to where it would force the manufacturers to reevaluate how long they're keeping these guys. And yeah, you can flip the coin and say, well, that's not fair to RJ, that's not fair to Jordan, it's not fair to this guy or that guy. But, what's the saying that we've all heard our entire lives? Life isn't fair. So which side of it do you want to, play on, basically? Do you want to keep the guys around forever? And maybe the solution, and just, we stick with it, is to turn that 250 class into a national class. I don't like that idea, just because if we're going to promote this as, anybody with enough skill can, pay their money, which I think is a crock, and have their shot at, qualifying with the best guys in the world on any given night, we need to make it a little bit more even playing field, or at least have a system of force out. You look at the NBA, the NFL, you have your starting 5 in the NBA, and then you have guys 6, 7, 8 starting on the bench, but they're rotated inconsistently. You get guys 9 through 15, or however many are on an NBA bench. Any one of those guys would be a top tier guy on one of the bottom teams that have losing seasons, that have no shot at making the playoffs. You take any 2 or 3 of those guys from each of those teams and you combine them all up on a lower level team, then it kind of brings it back up. There's only so many teams that can do that, and have the money and the resource and everything like that. But you see what I mean? It kind of, it stacks everything up for the guys coming out of college then, essentially, to get on a certain team, unless you're a very, very, very elite guy and you're going to get picked up in the first round of the NBA draft. But come up with a solution that works, and maybe is more fair to some guys and isn't, as fair to other guys, but I think we're kind of going in way too much in one direction for keeping guys on as long as they have. And again, I'm not, harping on any of these guys for being in the class as long as they have, but I just think we need to come up with a better system. And if it hurts guys after so many years, that's just the way it is. But I think to not give the amateurs coming into the pro ranks a fair shot, I think it's kind of an injustice. One other topic of note, flying under the radar this year after 3 races with, 4 is Dylan Ferrandis with the Phoenix Racing Honda team. And I love seeing this from him and the team for not being the elite level team. And, Dylan had a shot at being picked up by HEP Suzuki. He didn't get it. And a lot of that, we've heard is from Kenny not wanting him to be there, 2 A riders, instead of an A and a B. And I get it, and that's not the first time, and that's not going to be the last time that's ever happened in pro racing and AMA Supercross. But for Dylan to then get picked up by Phoenix Honda with David Eller, and I like those guys. I've worked with David in the past for that Phoenix Honda team on the GNCC side of things. Great dude to work with, and David's all business. And I think that's the right approach to take. He owns a construction company. It's, dollars and cents with him, and, I respect that. And for him to offer, Dylan a ride, and for Honda to help out with it, and Factory Connection, Ziggy to step up into the program, so it actually made it possible for Dylan to go racing this year. And then for him to get consistent 4, 5, 6 finishes and put him within fighting distance of the championship already after 3 races is something that's really cool to see. And for him to get that heat race win in San Francisco, I texted David. I was pumped for him, for Dylan, for the whole team, Heath Harrison and everybody. I was pumped. And it was cool to see that. And I'm really excited to see moving into the end of 2024, going into 2025, especially if Dylan stays there, what kind of support, additional support Honda will give David and the Phoenix team, to where, eventually there's not going to be a huge gap in performance or resources or anything between factory HRC and Phoenix Honda Racing. Like, I think if Dylan keeps progressing like this and showing what can be done on a lower level supported effort, I think that's going to bring Honda back into the fold to where you have essentially two factory programs. One's going to be with Jett and Hunter, the other is going to be with Ferrandis. So I'm really excited to see them moving forward and see what kind of support and what kind of level that team reaches. All right, guys, that's going to wrap it up for this one. Thank you for watching. I can only grow the channel if you guys subscribe, so please subscribe to the channel, like, share it around. You guys know what to do. If you're racing GNCC, National Enduro, Sprints, anything local around Ohio, West Virginia this year, head on over to KWolfeMedia.com. Take a look at all the services that I'm offering, from video content to YouTube and social media management, media coaching, everything like that. Send me an email, Kyle@KylewolfeMedia.com, if you're so inclined, if you're interested in a video this year. But thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.